Real quickly, just about myself, I have a background in traditional information security, came out of telecom, helped start up a company called Coalfire that is now the largest independent IT audit company in the US, also has an office in Manchester, but built that, took an exit from there, and had a buddy who was working with this crazy crypto company called Salt Blockchain, Salt Lending, that did lending with against crypto assets. Asked me to come help them build a security and compliance program. And now I can't go back to, banking and PCI and hospital security, and those things just don't work for me anymore. So here I am. I wound up at about the same time, and I apologize, I'm going to talk fairly quickly because I kept a whole bunch of slides here because I wanted to have the slides available for you guys afterwards, so I may blow through some things a little bit quickly. The point of that is that you have a reference, and we'll be sticking around afterwards if you have questions or anything like that. So about the same time, I got involved with this organization called the CryptoCurrency Certification Consortium, which is a mouthful, so we call it C4. Nothing to do with explosives. And one of the, they offer a certified Bitcoin professional, certified Ethereum professional. It's a nonprofit, does a lot of training and education stuff. But one of the things that they did early on was realize that there was a real need for some information security strategies and requirements and tactics that were specific to blockchain and the Web3 space, because it was really missing. And this came out of a couple of the big compromises back then. Mt. Gox, of course, was one of the first, and looking back at what happened there, it was very obvious that there were just basic security controls that weren't in place from the standpoint of separation of duties, one person having too much control, these sorts of things that are really kind of fundamental stuff. But there were some other things in play there as well. And so out of that came the CCSS, or the Cryptocurrency Security Standard. And one of the, and we continue to see these sorts of things, right? There was just in the news, was it Libitcoin had issues with a whole bunch of potentially really weak cryptographic wallet keys because they had seeded all of their keys using nothing but the timestamp on the devices that they were doing that with. And so the CCSS helps things, but people still have to apply it. And it's really been picking up steam lately. We've got some major players that have gotten CCSS validated in the space. It has been written into recommendations with various governmental organizations, the latest being the Commonwealth Model Law for cryptocurrencies and stablecoins. And actually one of the members of the CCSS committee that I chair is part of the working group for the Commonwealth Model Law. But we're starting to see a lot more interest from large exchanges and other entities, other organizations, as far as adopting this. We're also starting to see a lot of interest. So one of the things we've done over the last year is develop a training course for CCSS auditors and doing more certifying of those auditors, so that when companies want to get CCSS certified, they know that the auditors that are coming in and doing that actually have the expertise to do that. And so we've been building the educational programs and stuff like that around the program as well. So one of the things about the CCSS that I think is really important to understand is it is very specific to blockchain cryptocurrency. I say cryptocurrency, and that's what's in the name. It's very specific to blockchain. The focus is on key management, from key generation to wallet creation, through the life cycle of key management, with a focus on blockchain, because there are some very different aspects to blockchain than traditional information security, right? In traditional information security, when you are dealing with TLS or SSL, secure web services and stuff like that, when you expire a key, you can basically just throw it away, right? It no longer matters, it's no longer relevant. Obviously, you can't do that when you're dealing with blockchain wallets or crypto wallets. because even a small amount of crypto dust that's sitting in a wallet may gain in value. Somebody might go and send crypto to an old wallet address because once an address is out there, it's always out there. So the rules that come into play for securing the environment are a little bit different than traditional security on top of traditional security, and that's kind of the goal of the CCSS. It's intended as a plugin for the Web3 space. It doesn't have all of the general controls that you'll find in PCI or ISO or SOC or any of the other more general security standards. And a lot of those security standards will in fact cover basic key management. PCI goes pretty deep actually on key management in some aspects, but again, not from the right perspective from the blockchain and the crypto space. And so that's the role of the CCSS. Another thing that's kind of unique about, so what does the CCSS cover? This is what it covers. It's 10 high-level aspects. There's about 66 controls or potential controls underneath that, and I'll tell you why they're potential controls in just a second. Version 9 came out at the beginning of this year, and the highlighting on this, there were some pretty significant changes in version 9. And the highlighting on this represents that. So there was one entirely new aspect added in governance and risk, and the other orange ones all had significant additions to the subcomponents of those control areas. One of the things that's really cool about the CCSS also, I think, is that it is a community-driven standard. So all of the changes that came out of this came from input from the community, came from just paying attention to the kinds of vulnerabilities and stuff that we were seeing, the kinds of compromises and issues that we were seeing across the crypto and blockchain industries. But it's, like I said, C4 is a nonprofit organization. All of us on the committee are volunteers, and none of us sit on the committee with the idea of we decide what these things are, right? So our goal is just to provide some organization and a little bit of governance around the creation and management of the CCSS. And so there was just a lot had happened in the I think 3 years from the last significant update. And so in January, the version that was released had quite a few major updates and contributions to it. And so that's what I'll go into a little bit today, but since I'm assuming anybody here, I should have asked this to start with, ever even heard of the CCSS before? Well, that's nice, a couple of folks, good. That's more than usual. But that's why we're doing these sorts of things, this sort of outreach, right? Trying to make people aware of this. It is the first standard that came out around this. It came out in C4, I think we started in 2014. And the CCSS came out, I think, in 2016, 2017. Don't quote me on those, but it's been around for a while. We're starting to see now, there's a new ISO standard coming out for blockchain security. And so we're starting to see some other players, some very specific players. Ethereum node operators has a security standard, very focused on being an Ethereum node operator, those sorts of things. But this is the oldest standard in the space. And like I said, the thing I think that's really cool is it's community driven. It's not a bunch of exchanges or custodians getting together and saying, hey, we think this is what the security standard should look like because we know we can meet that. It's driven by people just across the industry who have an interest in this space. The other thing that's interesting in it, and this is the reason why I said potential controls earlier, this is kind of unique to the structure of the CCSS, is that there are 3 different levels. Level 1 is the baseline entry level for validation. It's a solid entry level, and I always want to start there because a lot of people will come at it and they'll be like, well, no, we got to be at level 3, right? If we're going to do anything in this space, we have to be compliant with level 3 if we're going to be compliant. And so if we can't be compliant with level 3, we're not even going to bother with the CCSS. The low bar for the CCSS is a high level of security and accountability for crypto assets. And so just keep that in mind. Level 2 and level 3, the way that the matrix of controls is laid out is you'll have a control area, one of those aspect areas from the previous slide. and then there may be 1, 2, or 3 controls for that aspect that build on each other. And that can have, for example, one of the ones that got changed, that we'll talk about in a minute, has to do with single signature wallets versus multi-signature wallets, right? So you can be level 1 validated and have single signature wallets. Didn't used to be the case in version 8. But to be level 2 or level 3 compliant, you have to have multi-signature wallets for protecting the assets that you're holding. So that's why the kind of the 3 levels, it expands on based on what the business is doing. Basically it's risk driven, right? How many, what is the value, the total value of the assets that you're holding? Are they your own corporate assets? Are they customer assets? How many customers' assets are those, right? Like, you know, these are the sorts of things that a business would take into account in determining which level of compliance they wanted to try and reach. So, any questions up till there? Just kind of about the CCSS in general. I know we've got question time at the end. So what I wanted to do was just kind of walk through a few of the major changes, mostly just to kind of give you an idea, a little bit deeper idea of what the controls actually address and look like. So without going through all of them, one of the big ones, like I just mentioned, was version 8. You couldn't be CCSS validated with the original CCSS unless you were using multi-signature. Again, being community driven, what we heard was that there are business circumstances, there's you know, reasons for using single signature, you know, a good secure single signature wallet that meets the rest of the controls of the CCS is going to be safer than somebody being not CCSS validated. And using single signature, but with lousy key entropy or something because they weren't paying attention to that. So, so this is one of the changes. We get really, it does get very, very specific in some of these. Requirement 1, which is all about key generation, covers entropy management, doing things like not just having timestamp be the entropy input for generating your cryptographic keys. Same for wallet generation, right? Like how are you actually generating the wallets? If you're doing derived wallets, are they all hardened? Is it hardened derivation paths so that somebody can't reverse engineer the root level keys or root level wallets and tell who that wallet belongs to, that sort of thing. So this was one of the changes. Another one of the key changes was, this was actually a new aspect control, which was around key management responsibilities. Several of the changes in the standard this time around have to do actually with kind of broader accountability and responsibilities for key management. This overlaps with much more the more traditional security compliant and compliance standards that are out there, which almost always require executive awareness of the risks associated with doing something. And these were pointed out as being kind of missing from the CCSS. And again, while we don't want to take on controls that are already covered in other standards, if somebody only does the CCSS, if you're a startup crypto company, but you want to demonstrate that you're actually handling keys and security properly, and you do this, and you're not going to go for a full-blown SOC 2 or ISO certification or something like that yet, we wanted to make sure that at least some of those fundamentals were covered in there. And that's why we do have things like security assessment requirements, and the focus of all those is always the scope of all those is always on the cryptographic environment. When you start a CCSS audit, one of the first things that you do is define what that in-scope environment looks like, just like anything else. And in fact, it's probably worth mentioning, if you go and you look at the certified entities on the C4 website, there's a list maintained there of audited and certified entities. It's very important to note that an entity is not actually certified. A system is, right? And so BitGo is on there, right? It's BitGo's full custody system, and if you go look at it, you'll see, right, that's the current thing that's actually certified. Same with Fireblocks. Sometimes they will be a service provider, and what they're actually providing is a certification that says these controls are in scope, and those are all validated, so that if you integrate with them as a service provider, you can leverage those controls as part of your own CCSS compliance or cryptographic security processes in your organization. So anyways, this requires people to acknowledge in writing their association with risk. This was a big one, the addition in the assessment section for smart contract auditing. The CCSS originally, like I said, it's an old standard and started very, very focused on Bitcoin. And so this was not a major concern when the standard was originally drafted. Definitely was something that we got a lot of feedback over the last couple of years going into this update cycle as being necessary. And we see it all the time, right? Every time that there's another bridge or smart contract, somebody has figured out how to compromise. How important it is that you have secure code review processes specifically for the smart contracts that are being developed and deployed out there, and that includes methodologies for maintaining that security, right, when updates to the code are made and that sort of thing. Logging and monitoring was always a part of it. There were some updates to the standard, specifically around monitoring. Logging was always part of the standard, I should say, but there were some updates to the standard around monitoring. Again, that's very, very similar to traditional information security. The focus is on things like key management and your key systems, and then also a requirement. Is it listed here? This is. Sorry, I'm looking ahead. I see in my head slides. I apologize for that. This was the slide I was talking to last. The monitoring, one of them, and it was part of the original CCSS. It actually was dropped somewhere along the way and came back into the standard around wallet monitoring to make sure that, because just like with credit cards and stuff, a lot of times somebody gets access to some keys or thinks they have access to some keys, they'll try doing a small transaction first to see if they actually can, and then they'll go and drain your wallets, or they'll move money in chunks, because a lot of times if somebody's stealing crypto, they're moving it through legitimate exchanges and converting it into a different type of crypto to try and hide the trail of where it goes, and they'll do that in chunks that don't raise red flags at the exchange and that sort of thing. So monitoring your wallets for unauthorized transactions or unaffected transactions becomes really important. This was a new requirement, so you always had to have a key inventory, but there was no requirement for maintenance. So there were also some of the requirements like this that were just like updates to improvements on existing requirements. Basically just kind of a maturity of the standard sort of thing. So those are some of the sorts of things that the CCSS covers, just looking at those major changes. Like I said, it is a soup to nuts standard for key management, everything from the systems that you're generating keys on and the physical security and isolation of those systems and environments when it's appropriate, to data destruction, right? Obviously, like I already mentioned, right, you generally don't ever want to destroy cryptographic keys that control wallets, but you absolutely want to destroy hard drives and even paper backups and stuff like that at different times that contain that in a secure fashion, right? So if you're shifting the way or the location where you're storing legacy keys or something like that, right? You want to make sure that you're destroying the old key material. When you're generating keys, you want to make sure that the systems you generated them on, once you've got the keys out there, don't maintain that key data or entropy data that was used to create the keys. last slide, and then do some questions. We've had the CCSS auditor position for a couple of years now. We've been, like I said, we've been working on the updating the certification process for auditors and the whole registration process for audited firms over the last year and a half, 2 years. We're also in the process of building out the CCSS implementer certification. So like anything else, right? Sometimes you want somebody to come in and help you build something. An auditor is going to come in, they're going to say, explain to me the environment, how you're doing these things, and then they're going to match it against the appropriate controls. But sometimes you're starting from scratch, or sometimes you've got something, but you want to improve it. And so the idea of the CCSSI is that both are going to have like the foundational understanding of the standard and the controls, but the implementer certification is going to be more focused on the sort of person and organization or entity you might want to hire and work with to help them build out those security controls in a secure environment. So that's that. Thank you. Like I said, I apologize for going through